Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode. So today we're going to be talking about the market, the health of the market. So is there a market crash coming? Is there a housing crisis in our midst? I'd like to say no, and I'm going to go over some data to kind of give you guys an idea as to why I believe that is not happening. That is not the case. If you have questions, comments, concerns, feedback, or anything at all, give me a call, shoot me a text, 407-308-4518. Peter at flreagent.com. Like I said, give me a call, shoot me a text, send me an email. I'll send you this information. I'll refer you to other videos that I've done about this subject and kind of take things from there. So listen, I'm going to go ahead and start by saying that we are not in the same situation we were back in 2008 because of two different types of crises. First off, back then, we had a mortgage and housing crisis. That was what it was. It was a mortgage meltdown, and the housing crisis happened. Everything went to crap, and that's what happened. Right now, we don't have a mortgage or a housing crisis. We have a health crisis, an external factor to the real estate market. So remember that. Keep that in mind. It is not the market itself. It's an external threat that has come in and slowed down not just the economic, but also the real estate market. So first thing I'm going to talk about is appreciation. Now, you guys know that I have done a few videos regarding appreciation, specifically in the Central Florida area. So the Seminole County, Orange County, Osceola County area, the Tri-County area right there. Remember, appreciation rates are different throughout the entire country. They average out at a certain number different in New York than they do here in Florida. So keep that in mind, okay? But at the end of the day, like my videos have said, is that appreciation has slowed. On average, it has slowed down. I'm not saying it has gone into recession or has gone into the negative. It has simply slowed down. If we were at 7.3 before, 7.3%, and then we went down to 3.7%, and then this year they're predicting for us to be somewhere under 2% in terms of appreciation, and I truly believe that's going to happen, especially with the current situation. That doesn't mean we're going into a crashing market. That just means that things are not, or property houses are not appreciating as much or as fast as people think, right? And this here chart, this chart I'm about to show you guys, shows that for what it is, for what it really is, compared to the housing crisis of 2008, or at least the numbers leading up to the crisis. So take a look at the screen. So as you can see here, appreciation rates, you have two sides to it, really, the red side and the green side, and it shows you the appreciation rates leading up to the housing crisis. As you can see, from 2000, it was an 8.6% appreciation rate. Now, keep in mind, these are average numbers for the country. Again, there's different numbers for different areas, but this is what they look at, the general number of appreciation, the average appreciation for the country. So we were at 8.6% in 2000. 2002, we went down to 8.5%. 2004, we skyrocketed to 12.5%. And then 2005, we were at 11.4%. And if you remember, at that point, everybody was buying homes. Everybody was cashing out. They were refinancing and doing a whole bunch of things that simply are part of what led to the crash. Now, let's look to the right-hand side. So the last 6 years, right? 2014, 4.4. 15 is 5.2. 16, 5.5. 17, 6.4. 18, 4.8, and 19, 4.7. Now keep in mind, these are the general average appreciation rates for the country. Now, like I said before, me breaking down the Central Florida area, Orange County, Seminole County, and Osceola County, coming up with a 2% or less appreciation rate. Listen, that's just our area. On average, remember, on average, you have neighborhoods like Nick Nona that are going to appreciate differently than will the Narcoossee corridor in St. Cloud. It's just going to happen, right? But if you average it out, I believe we're going to be under 2%. However, that does not mean that we are going into a crash, because as you saw from the chart, as a matter of fact, look at it again. As you saw from the chart, things were over the top back then, and people were borrowing money on those overinflated prices, and then they were cashing out, and I'll get into that in a minute, but then they were cashing out at those inflated prices. So as you can see, the fact that it's not happening the same in this time of the year, even with this environment going on with the COVID thing, does not point to a market crash. But I'll give you some more data. So let's look next at mortgage credit. Now, mortgage credit, what we look at in mortgage credit is let me get the actual breakdown correctly. The actual term is Mortgage Credit Availability Index, okay? So we're looking at that index. Basically, layman's terms is, listen, the higher the index is, the easier it is to get a mortgage. Remember, higher the index, easier to get a mortgage. The lower the index, the harder it is to get a mortgage. Keep that in mind. Remember that. So high index, easy mortgage. Low index, hard mortgage. Back in 2008, leading up to 2008 and that housing crisis that we had, I mean, matter of fact, just take a look at the screen. You'll see what I mean. So if you look right there, the housing index or the mortgage credit availability index was at 868.7 back in January of 05, right? And after that, of course, it started plummeting down. But even if you look, granted, the chart doesn't span that far, but if you look beyond that, June of 04, you see that it was just on the rise, right? It was just almost a straight up line spike all the way up to June of 06 when it spiked at 868.7. And after that, of course, the crash happened. And look at that. The index went way, way down because obviously values dropped. People weren't buying houses. And at that point, lenders were trying to get people to buy houses. But how are you going to buy a house when you're overpaying for it anyway, right? The mortgage industry and the housing industry, the health of the housing market and the health of the mortgage market go hand in hand. Keep that in mind. Now look to the right-hand side. If you see that today, what are we at today? Today we are approximately at 152.1 on the index, meaning that it is much harder for people to get mortgages. What does that mean? That means that if it's harder for a person to get a mortgage, that means that they're less likely for, there's less likelihood for there be an overabundance of people buying homes because, they're easy to get. And on top of that, the appreciation rates are out of control. So that's spiking. So if you look at it, it's not just one factor that, determines whether or not we're in a housing crisis. There's multiple factors go along with it. And we're going to go into some more because you know what? Not people like proof for one, but I want to make sure you guys have the full picture or at least an idea of how this is determined. So next we're going to look at the number of homes sold. So this is known as, let's just say for layman's terms, how inventory numbers and how long it takes to sell through. So take this into account. If you had, 2,000 homes in any given market, and those 2,000 homes take, let's just say 6 months of to sell through in order to have zero houses in the market, that determines what kind of market you're in. You're either in a seller's market or in a buyer's market. If it takes over 7 months for whatever inventory that is currently active for sale in the MLS, if it takes over 7 months for that to sell, you're in a buyer's market. If it takes less than 6 months or less than 5 months, around there, about 6 months or less, then you're in a seller's market. 6 months to 7th month is kind of a neutral zone. So look at the chart, look at the screen. So if you see here, the housing market back or leading up to 2008, 2010, that era, it was kind of stable at first in the seller's market. And then out of nowhere, 2006, it skyrocketed up. The number of inventory shot up again in 07. As you can see, that spiked, and it shot up again in 08. Came down in 09, but shot right back up in 2010. And basically, we were in a buyer's market. There was too much inventory. In other words, houses were overpriced. People were not buying the homes, and homes were staying on the market for over 7 months. So buyers were able to honestly lowball properties, and a whole bunch of other stuff was obviously affects the value of the property, the market value of the property. So that actually hurt the market value a lot. Now look, keep on looking to the right-hand side. Look at today. Today in 2020, we're sitting in the bottom, at this point, the bottom end of a curve on the seller's market, into the seller's market. We have less than 6 months of inventory. Right now, I believe in the Tri-County area, we have about 3.5 to 4 months of inventory right now. And at this point in time, I mean, the houses are selling for what they're selling for. If they're priced right, they're flying off the shelf, which is why we have less than 6 months of inventory, which is why a lot of people, probably you, have been called on, emailed, written a letter. People have knocked on your door asking you if you want to put your house on the market, but we have no inventory to sell. And the little inventory that is there, it's either one, overpriced, or two, priced right, and it flies off the shelf. So then obviously the fastest person gets that deal. So that is another thing that should tell you, listen, right now houses are being priced more or less around market value, which is why they're flying off the shelf. They are, we have no inventory. The demand is high, but the inventory is low, which also, of course, gives the seller a little bit more control in terms of what they sell the property for. But at this point in time, they're not being sold like they were back in 2007, 2008, where they were extremely overpriced, right? So that's something to consider. Again, another factor into the housing crisis dilemma. Next, we're going to be talking about the use of home equity. So listen, it was no secret that people back then were doing cash out refinances. That's what I mentioned at the beginning of the video. So basically what that means is I bought the house for $200,000, hypothetically, right? The numbers leading up to the housing crash, everything of course skyrocketed, values and everything apparently went up. They were overvalued at that point. But if I bought it for $200,000 and now the bank is telling me, hey, listen, I can refinance you for $400K, I'm going to go refinance for $400K and I'm going to cash out. I'm going to take that extra cash from $200K or whatever I owe. Let's say I owe $200,000 and they refinance me at $4. I'm going to take that $200,000 gap and I'm going to take it out of the mortgage, out of the equity of the property, and I'm going to use it for whatever. Back then, people were using that money for their lifestyle. They were living the high life, right? They were buying jet skis. They were buying boats. They were buying new cars. They were doing this. They were doing that. They weren't investing their money. They were going on vacations and crap, right? They were using their money unwisely, right? To be nice. I could say stupidly, but they were using it unwisely, right? But that's not the case now. Take a look at the screen. All right, so look, here it shows you, it gives you a nice little visual. So equity cash out, right? By refinancing in the billions, with a B, with the billions. 2005, you see a $263 billion cash out refinance that happened. And these are total numbers. 2006, 321, 2007, 240, a total just in those 3 years of $824 billion that were taken out of equity, out of home equity. And these are billions that honestly were just never used to benefit the property. They were billions that were used to benefit people's lifestyles. Now take a look. 2017, 18, and 19, you have 71 billion, 87 billion, 74 billion, totaling to $232 billion approximately that people have refinanced and taken out of their property. That's a pretty damn significant difference. That's a huge difference, right? So again, people are being more wise with their money. Instead of taking out all the money of equity that they have, because guess what? Equity kind of safeguards you against a potential market slowdown, a dip, whatever. Because if you have $200,000 in equity, right, and the market drops a little bit and all of a sudden it cuts your equity in half and you have $100,000 equity, guess what? You're still not upside down. You still have some money to play with, right? You still have equity to play with. You may not have made, or you may not now make more, as much money as you would have if you would have sold 2 months ago before the dip. But guess what? You still have $100,000 to play with in terms of not owing more money than what the property is worth. That is the important thing about cashing out or about refinancing and then cashing out. You have to make sure you safeguard your investment. A lot more people are being smarter today because they have more equity today with their equity and not taking it out. Because you know what? You never know what's going to happen. I'd rather sell my house and keep the $50K of equity, $100K of equity and get that on the back end when I sell it than get it now, be in a house now that is now, not delinquent, but now I owe more on the property than it's realistically worth. For what? So I can go buy some damn jet skis and go on vacation? Screw that, right? So people are being a lot smarter now. And that is something that, again, determines a lot in terms of a housing crisis or not. Right now, people are pretty much, say, leveling out in terms of what they owe on the property, how much it's worth, so on and so forth. But talking about equity, next we're actually going to be talking about how home equity looks today. So take a look at the screen. So right now, as you can see, about 53.8% of all homes in America have at least 50% equity, right? So this is very important going off of my last point. People are not just taking that money out of their homes. They are leaving that value in their property, in their home. That way, you know what? You never know what can happen. They can safeguard them against a dip, or really it just gives them a better investment. At the end of the day, a home purchase, some people look at it as an investment, some people do not. But at the end of the day, you have money in it, and the last thing you want is to lose money, right? So if you have positive money, in other words, if you have equity, I would call that an investment. If you don't have equity and you owe more money than what you currently have, the property is currently worth, I would almost call that a depreciating asset, just because unless something major happens to get that property value to go up, it's going to just appreciate from there on out. But that's besides the point. Take a look again on the bottom left-hand side. It says about 37% of all homes are owned free and clear, which means that people that, have homes that are worth $400K and they're paid off, that's $400K of equity. That's $400,000 they have to technically play with if there's a dip. On the right, 26.7% of the mortgage homes have at least 50% equity. That means that, listen, there are people that have at least 50% equity. If you owe $200,000, yeah, then you're probably worth about 400K. So again, same thing I was talking about before. They have that number to play with. So my point in saying that, right, is that people have the equity and they're keeping the equity in their homes. And that matters a lot in terms of the health status of the market. If your home is worth 400K and you only owe 350, you have positive equity. Hell, if you owe 399 and your home is worth 400, in terms of thousands, you have $1 of equity. I mean, equity is equity, right? And that's a silly point to make, but it's the truth, right? So that is a major factor. Those 5 things I just went over are major factors in the health status of the actual real estate market. So this video is getting kind of long. I'm already at like 15 minutes. But listen, bottom line is that we are not in a housing crisis. We are not in a mortgage crisis right now. We're not. We are in a health crisis due to an external factor that's influencing not just the economic health, but also the speed or the health of the real estate market. Does not mean that you should not buy or sell. It does not mean that you should go hide, put your head in the sand like an ostrich and freaking do nothing. That doesn't mean anything at all. Listen, if anything, buying and selling a house is going to help boost this economy and this real estate market back to its full glory whenever we are, let's just say, free and clear and the whole country is open again. So listen, if you're thinking about selling, if you're thinking about buying, contact a real estate professional like myself or someone else. I really don't care. Just talk to someone regarding what options you have. If you have questions for me, comments, feedback, or anything at all, give me a call or shoot me a text at 407-308-4518 or send me an email at peter@flreagent.com. Until next time, we'll talk soon. Bye.